Yeah. What's up, everybody? It's your favorite reprogrammed Imperial Droid's favorite nerd, and today we are looking at the Hot Toys K-2SO. I've been really looking forward to this release. I've kind of been itching to get an all-plastic Hot Toys figure, and I have one, and there's some significant issues. There's also tons of great stuff, but we're going to talk about all of that as soon as we finish talking about accessories. He comes with the little blaster pistol, really well done, beautifully sculpted, beautifully painted, some nice weathering. There's a dry brush of silver, and then there's some extra weathering silver painted details throughout. Looks really good. We got a little translucent piece of plastic in there for the scope on both ends. Extremely well done. They always knock accessories out of the park. I don't think I've ever had a complaint about such things. Which he holds just fine by utilizing the fingers, just holding it in with tension. I will say, being as though it's Hot Toys, being as though you kind of expect all the bells and whistles with Hot Toys, I think it would have been nice if the gun was had a magnet that connected to the hand to give it a more solid feel, because you really got to wrap the fingers around there. The finger joints are a little dainty, so it causes some concern. I haven't had any issues, but you see where I'm going with that. He comes with the grenade. I think this is the grenade. Oh, that's pretty cool. I didn't even realize it did that. So, like, to arm it, you know, you pop that open, and then it has the red paint in there. Some black glossy paint on it as well. And I think that might be silver paint that sits up in the middle. So really cool accessory, really well done. And then he comes with this antenna piece. You know, it's good. It follows the kind of format and the design. It has that like metallic kind of finish on it, and then the white on the antennas. Very dainty, so please use caution. And this plugs into his back right there. No fuss, no muss. Just slide in. Make sure you push from the base, so to speak, so that you don't cause any issue there with the antenna, which are relatively fragile. He comes with the display base, of course. I like it. I like it a lot. I like the simple little great design here. The K-2SO, the Star Wars. I wish it would have said Star Wars Rogue One, but it's all good. The little Rebel sign. Of course, the prongs that slide up and down in order to adjust for the figure. And it also has a little design card you can put over top that sits inside where this connects to this, if this is your thing. This isn't really my thing, so I'm keeping it this way. He comes with the light up feature as well, and the batteries for the light up feature. You remove the top part of the head. There's the screw where we're going to unscrew and put the batteries, and there's the on-off switch. I'm not going to bore you on camera by doing that. You guys can, when you get it, can do it yourselves. I think it's fairly common sense once you get to this point. But real quick though, I will show you that in here, the eyes themselves are adjustable in terms of the direction that they are looking. This one, I will say, is a bit looser than this one, but they're both adjustable. And once it's on, it looks really good. The only bummer about this is, you know, you got to take the head off to turn it on and off, and you can't just have it on all the time, but good night, that's pretty cool. Pretty awesome. Real quick, something I want to add that's kind of a bummer, I think, is that it doesn't appear to be an off switch. Like, it's on all the way, and then it's just dim, but it's still on. Like, I guess that's using less battery, but I wish there was just an off switch so you weren't using any battery at all. So I don't know how long that's going to last, but that's kind of a bummer. Hopefully it lasts a while. Size comparison wise, there he is with the Hasbro SH Figuarts and 3 3/4 K-2SOs. Just one little K-2SO family. I don't have any other Rogue One Hot Toys to compare them to. I'll compare them to another Hot Toys figure, but I have Jen on pre-order, and I just haven't been able to swing Chirrut yet. So that's that. There he is next to Finn. So he's a big boy. Alright, so let's go through accuracy. You know, when it comes to this stuff, I really like to dig into accuracy because you're spending an awful lot of money. And I got to admit, it's pretty good. Let's zoom in a little bit further. The scratches and stuff aren't perfect, but, you know, I don't think we should expect that. But it looks like the sculpt is pretty much dead on the money. If you look at the little, like, cylindrical things around his head there, like they stick out just a bit, just like they do in the design. Like there is little attentions to detail throughout that I feel like are significant. All the little grooved spaces in there seems to be identical. It definitely has some wear and tear paint on the face, which does give it that that lived-in look and that worn-out look, which is good, the eyes and all that stuff. So yeah, I gotta say this is pretty much spot on. And then looking at the full body, it seems like everything is pretty much dead on as well. Like there's an insane amount of attention to detail here throughout the sculpt and finish that I think comes through brilliantly. Every little silver accent, every little sculpt nuance, like especially in all these details here on the chest, the little details on the sides of the arm and so forth. Like everything is really followed through for the most part to the nines. A real tremendous effort, honestly, in every regard. So let's talk about the figure. So all of the black is like a painted finish style, like this metallic almost finish on there, which looks really good. The head is on a double ball peg, so ball joint inside the head to the neck, and then the neck from a ball joint into the body. So the double ball peg is actually the neck, if that makes sense. The sculpting wise on the head, all those little nuances, that's all silver paint, and it looks like a black wash in there as well. Same for the mouth, for lack of a better term, and then on this side with a little red accent. All the wear and tear on the helmet, really nicely done. It doesn't look forced. It doesn't look heavy-handed. It looks natural, which is important. So articulation-wise, you can get using both sides of the ball peg, and this one is a little stiff, so be mindful. But you can get all the way down to there, and then all the way up to there, and then of course there is some side-to-side movement as well. So all of that works fairly well. I can't think of much more you'd want out of it. Moving down to the torso and shoulders, nice silver paint, different shades of silver, a darker silver, and then the regular silver, and then the yellow paint around the edges. As we always talk about, yellow is a hard color to kind of nail, and this nails it consistently throughout. It gets a little outside of the lines at times. It just gets in these little grooves here, but it's minimal. And it's kind of the cost. There's an example of it right there. I don't know if you can see that or not. Nothing you would ever notice on a shelf, but something worth mentioning for the sake of a review. Sculpt is dynamic. It's perfect. All of the stuff here, the little buttons and doodads, all that stuff is sculpted, painted. The little white outline there, all painted. All the little nicks in the armor and such, all painted, and like I said before, it's not heavy-handed. It's really sharply done. It looks like almost like they went through here with a little knife and scratched it themselves. Really, really, really well done. For the back, we have all of this stuff sculpted, painted, the little tight white lines, the red lines, all that stuff. It's really, really, really beautiful. Now, moving on to the arms, we have a ball peg inside of here. Now, you can drop this down. This is actually on a hinge, the shoulder pad, so you can get the shoulder pad out of the way. It hinges down, and then it has a hinge inside of it so that you can get the arm all the way up, 90 degrees, no problem. Really nice. And then you can just collapse it and reposition the shoulder pad, and you're good to go. And then you get the 360 all the way around. Lots of sculpt work here inside the shoulder. It seems like that could have used a little extra paint, but it's not hateful. It's hard to see. It's just one of those things where it's like, you know, a little extra maybe dry brushing or something in there would have been nice. Nice imperial symbol done, tampoed here on the other side, and then the scratch marks are consistent throughout. We have a bicep swivel, nicely done. And then we have die cast pieces, and I can't tell. It's at least here in the elbow and then some pieces here in the leg. This feels like plastic to me. Either way, we have silver paint on the joints, silver paint on the accents above the joints and below the joints, a darker gunmetal on the arm and the little accents here as well. Bringing up to the hand, we have a wrist swivel. We have a wrist hinge in, out. You can also, oh, you can't. Okay, so you can never... that's a bit of a bummer. So you can never, I guess he can't either though. You know, to be fair, like you can never articulate the hand up and down to here, but I guess he couldn't either. This seems consistent. But if you could have swiveled this hand on this joint, and I'm just making sure it doesn't move because a lot of these joints are really tight, that would have been an extra added bonus, but I guess it's not totally necessary. Silver there on the joints either way. All the fingers are individually articulated on hinges We have 1, 2, 3 hinges on each finger, so at each knuckle, and then silver painted on the joints themselves. Some of these joints are a little tight, so use caution when moving them around. They're smaller pieces of plastic, so just be careful. And then we have a ball peg at the thumb, and then an additional hinge at this thumb joint, and I don't think, yeah, I don't want to force it. I don't think there's one there. So that covers that. Moving on to the abdomen, it's a double ball peg from the abdomen into the pelvis. I will say that there's a ball peg here and there's die cast in the arm. Once you get it set, you should be fine, but if your joint isn't sitting right, it does flop down a bit. But by positioning the weight, you should be okay. So double ball peg here at the waist. So you get your waist swivel and you get a fair amount of movement around ab crunch wise down to there and up to there. So not a tremendous amount, but I don't think he had a tremendous amount of movement there anyway. We're going to move on down. So this stuff all here is all sculpted beautifully and beautifully painted with gunmetal silvers, brighter silvers on the pistons and so forth. All that stuff looks really good. It's consistent throughout, same sort of design throughout, nice paint, even continues on through the back. The pelvis is done the same way. We're going to get rid of the stand now, with the same sort of detailings and that gunmetal silver painted on there, and then the scratch marks and such. Really, really, really nicely executed. Now, for the hips, we have a ball joint at the hip. So, articulation is limited, but articulation on the guy, on the character design, is limited. Either way, you can get the leg all the way out forward. No problems there. And back, so you can get the full Monty out of him. And can you get the full Van Damme? Not even close. That's about as far as you get, but that might be consistent with the character design. At the ball peg is where you get your thigh swivel, so it is minimal, but it should get you everything you want, and you even have a lower thigh swivel here right above the knee, so between the two, you should be able to execute everything that you want in that regard. Silver paint here at the thigh, gunmetal silver there, and the same sort of paint wear consistent throughout. Knee is on a ratchet, nice stiff ratchet, so to speak. Silver paint on the joints, looks good. No issues. Moving down, same sort of paint detailings, the silver above the joints, much like we see at the elbow, and silver at the joint down at the bottom. Now, this is where we get into a little bit of trouble in paradise. So the ankles are ratcheted. It's a soft ratchet. The knees are soft ratcheted as well. And that feels nice. And it seems like it should be nice, but it's not totally nice, and we'll get there in a second. And then we have, so we get an ankle tilt all the way down, all the way up, and an old school rocker that's also ratcheted that we've seen pretty much on every K-2SO that they've put out. And then we have a toe hinge, tight joint, so be careful. Nicely done, beautifully sculpted. The problem is that there's not a lot of wiggle room where the ratchets are in the ankles, and they're not perfectly balanced. It's like you need them to be a little bit more forward than what they allow for. It's like the perfect space for standing is between ratchet joints. So you pretty much have to use the stand, or you have to put them in some sort of a pose. But he doesn't pose extremely well because there's no real outward thigh movement. So it's hard to find a good balancing point for this guy where he's going to support his own weight between the notches of the ratchets. And that is the big bummer with this fella. Now, to be fair, they give you a stand, so that does solve a bit of the problem, but it's also like a $230 figure, so I kind of feel like he should be able to stand. Real quick before we get to final thoughts, I just wanted to show you this is the best I could do to get him in some sort of a dynamic pose off of the stand and have him balanced on his own 2 feet. This is all I could get, and I messed around with him for probably 20 minutes, couldn't get anything better than this. Final thoughts wise, this is a hard one. So let's talk about the negatives. I wish there was a switch that turned his eyes off, completely off, so it didn't constantly drain the battery. It'll be interesting to see how long these batteries last with it on its low setting. It's currently on its high setting. I think it would have been nice if the gun was magnetized and there was a magnet in his hand so he could have held it a bit more securely. There is an extra joint in this thumb, the one that I couldn't get to move. I got it to move on that one, so that is there. The ankle ratchets are a great idea. Unfortunately, they're just not spaced properly, at least on mine, to allow him to be standing in a very stoic or dynamic pose naturally without the assistance of a stand. Now, to be fair, they offer you the stand. And in the past, my stance has always been, for lack of a better term, if the figure can't stand, but you provide a stand for the figure to be displayed, you get a pass, and I have to follow that through here. But at the price point, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a bummer. I wish there was a swivel on the wrist at both ends. Maybe it's there and I just can't see it because how stiff some of the joints are, but that would bring us to another problem, which is a lot of these joints are super stiff. So be very cautious when manipulating them. Also, there's a ton of die cast. There's die cast in the joints, and then there's die cast in the lower calves. Like all those pieces there are die cast. So he has a lot of weight. As a result, that weight is putting a fair amount of strain on a lot of the joints. So when you're going to manipulate the joints, sometimes you might have to use some extra kind of love and TLC, let's say, in order to get him to pose the way you want him to without the die cast putting strain on the joints. So in all, it's a fair amount of issues. Now the positives are the sculpt is absolutely 100% spot on perfect. It's to die for. It's exactly what you want from a sculpt. I've been looking forward to doing a Hot Toys figure that wasn't relying on soft goods, and it pleases me that this is the first in that regard because I think they did an outstanding job. The paint is all done beautifully, perfectly, exactly where it should be, and it is extremely elegant. I love the light up feature. I, of course, wish there was a way to turn it completely off, but I do love it. I think it looks super cool. The accessories are wonderful as always. There's not many, but he didn't have many accessories, so I ultimately get it. The presence is definitely unmistakably K-2SO and strikes that if you love this character like I do, it gives you those feels. So I ultimately recommend it. Just be aware it's far from perfect. If you plan on displaying this figure without using the base, the chances of you being frustrated, it's high. It's very high. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Until next time, take care.